Rain fretted the city in diagonal lines, washing neon into the gutters and turning the morning sidewalk into a ribbon of mirrors. He stood beneath the awning of the corner cafe he owned, and no one recognized him. That was the point. A gray baseball cap, a thrift store jacket, stubble left intentionally uneven. The man who could break a neighborhood with a phone call and rebuild it with a handshake walked in like he had nothing to do with the sign over the door, Cento & Co. Lorenzo Moretti had crafted this chain like he crafted power, quietly, relentlessly, with a network of loyalists and suppliers who owed him favors he never collected too loudly. The cafes were the clean face of a dirty empire. Profit met polish, and polish kept questions away. But numbers had been wrong for weeks. A register short here, a delivery skim there, whispers of a manager who feared no audit. He should have sent a lieutenant. Instead, he came himself, because the rot he feared wasn't about money. It was about the parts of him he couldn't bear to find hollow. The bell over the door gave a cheerful ping that felt unearned for a morning like this. He paused just inside, letting the smell of espresso and cinnamon sit with him. The place looked as his architects promised. Subway tile, warm wood, brass accents that would soften with fingerprints. Near the window, a kid read a comic book. An old couple shared a muffin like a secret. His cafe worked. It lived. He stepped to the back of the line, kept his head low, listened. The manager, slick hair, tight tie, a jaw that worked when he wasn't chewing anything, barked softly at a barista for stacking cups too high. The kid apologized, even though it didn't look wrong. Weak spine in the boss, strong spine in the kid. He filed both away. Then he heard her. "Morning," she said to the woman ahead of him, and the word landed like warm bread on a cold plate. Not bright, not fake. True. She must have been late 20s, maybe 30. Dark hair gathered in a practical knot with a few rebellious strands escaping near her cheekbones. Eyes the color of strong tea. No diamonds, no drama, but a quiet coherence. Like everything about her had agreed, at least for today, to be gentle. He didn't look at her long. That was dangerous. He kept his face aimed at a chalkboard where someone had drawn a crooked coffee bean with a crown. The line moved, shoes squeaked, someone laughed. The manager muttered again. "Next," she said, and when he lifted his eyes he found hers steady, unafraid. There was a smear of flour on her apron, and he had the absurd thought that if he touched it, it would mark him too. "What can I get you?" "Large Americano. Black." He made his voice smaller than it was. Street corner, not corner office. She rang it up. "Name?" "Enzo," he said, close enough to the truth to catch if flung back at him. Her mouth tilted. A pen hesitated over the lid. She didn't write it. "I'll remember." He paid cash because paper didn't gossip like cards did. While he waited, the cafe continued its low-grade theater. A printer sneezed tickets. Milk hissed. A baby yelped. Was soothed. He let the room talk to him in all its small ways. Drafts, cues, angles the cameras missed, the slow blink of the cleaning light on the espresso machine that meant whoever closed last night had done it right. She returned with his drink and set it down like it mattered. That detail, the way she placed the lid so the sipper faced him, the way she gave people the dignity of a precise gesture, made something shift a fraction of an inch inside his ribs. He nodded, ready to step away, ready to be no one. But she glanced toward the door where the rain had thickened, then toward the tables where strangers hid from their mornings, and she offered him 4 words that touched a place Prophet never reached. "You are safe here." He didn't blink, didn't breathe. The manager scolded someone. The baby resumed his yelping. A siren found the street and slid away. Inside, everything stayed still. "What?" he asked, not because he hadn't heard, but because he had. "Your jacket's soaked," she said, and now she smiled, apologetic for her own boldness. "Storm's supposed to get worse. Sit as long as you need. You are safe here." He nodded like it meant nothing, said, "Thanks," like it meant everything, took the corner table where he could watch without being watched. The coffee steamed, the glass fogged. The city pressed its forehead to the window and peered in. Her name, he learned over the next 10 minutes, was Maya. It was spoken by regulars with an ease that told him she'd been blessing this room for a long time. She remembered a delivery driver's kid's birthday. She set 2 napkins when a woman with shaking hands spilled sugar. She cut a blueberry muffin in half and wrapped the bigger piece like she'd made a tactical decision for kindness. When the rush thinned, the manager did what weak men do when goodness threatens them. He tried to grind it down. 3 comps yesterday, he said, waving a printout. We are a cafe, Maya, not a shelter. Her eyes didn't flinch. The scanner misread the loyalty app twice. The third was a kid whose card didn't pass. It was $3. 3 turns into 30 turns into a policy, he said, satisfaction curling his lip. And policy comes from me. Lorenzo didn't move. Yet a storm began behind his stillness. Policy came from him, in truth. But sometimes policy came from a woman deciding a stranger should have a soft place to put down a heavy morning. He sipped coffee that wasn't as bitter as he expected. He watched the man who thought he ran the room tap a pen against his teeth. He watched the woman who actually ran its soul refill a water for a man who hadn't asked. You are safe here. He had built empires and burnished facades, but he had never built that. Outside, the rain escalated to theater. Inside, the bell pinged again. 2 men in dark coats ignored the line, walked to the register, and leaned in like they owned air. Their eyes were the wrong kind of alert. The manager tried on his authority and found it didn't fit. Maya stepped in. She didn't raise her voice. It simply carried. Gentlemen, the line starts at the door. The taller one smirked. We're not here for coffee. Then you'll want to get some outside, she said, because inside is for coffee. The short one's gaze flicked around the room, inventorying cameras and exits, and landed on Lorenzo's corner. Not long enough. Lorenzo shifted his cap down a breath. The men shared a look. The taller one tapped the counter twice and left the way men leave when patience is a commodity they're saving for later. The bell pinged. The rain shoved the door back toward its frame. For the first time that morning, Lorenzo let a fact step into the light fully dressed. Either trouble had begun to orbit this address, or he had brought it with him. Maybe both. Either way, he had work to do. He waited until his cup was empty and his pulse wasn't. Then he stood. The manager watched him go like he wanted to tell a stranger where to put his lid. Maya looked up from tying a child's scarf tighter and met Lorenzo's eyes across the room. There was no flirt in it. There was something steadier and absurdly more dangerous to a man like him. Trust delivered cheaply, like a sugar packet you didn't realize you needed until it was in your hand. He left without giving it back. The rain swallowed him. The city closed around his shoulders. He didn't notice the cold until his phone buzzed and brought the rest of his world with it. Update, said Nico, his oldest friend, his quietest blade. 2 suits came by, Lorenzo said. I know. We saw them go in. They're not ours. I assumed. Assume less, Nico said. Something's shifting, and your manager has been moving small numbers into a large shadow. Names? Not yet. But if you're asking for a knife, say so. Lorenzo watched the cafe through the wet glass. Maya laughed at something an old man said, and the room brightened like someone turned the dimmer by a finger's width. Not yet, he said. Then what? I'm going back tomorrow. You went today. I know. A pause. You sound like a man who found a window he didn't know he'd bricked up. She said 4 words, Lorenzo answered, not sure why he was saying anything at all. And they were nothing, and they were everything. 4 words don't change a business, Nico said. They can change a man who runs one. Careful, Nico said softly. I'm never anything else. He ended the call and let the rain clean his face, though it never reached the parts that needed it most. Around the corner, a truck shuddered. A street vendor cursed. A saxophone tried something warm in a doorway and failed. He turned up his collar and walked. Every step sounded like a decision he hadn't yet made. Tomorrow arrived while he was still standing in today, and tomorrow would ask him to choose. He returned before the open sign flipped, watched the setup through glass, the calibration of espresso shots, the silent choreography of steam and cloth and metal. The way Maya reached for a stack of cups and let the bottom one go so gravity would help instead of fighting her. Smart, gentle, efficient. The manager arrived late. He carried the smell of last night and cologne that hoped no one would notice. Maya didn't comment. She only moved faster for the first hour, the way decent people do when they know other people's laziness doesn't care about fairness. Lorenzo claimed the corner again, noted the place where the floorboard complained, filed the squeak with 100 other tiny truths that told a larger one. His cafe's soul had grown without him, and someone, somewhere, wanted to sell it for parts. Halfway through the morning, the two men in dark coats returned. They didn't push past anyone this time. They stood by the pastry case as if considering sugar and spoke quietly enough to be polite, loudly enough to be overheard if you knew how to listen. "Truck's late," the taller one said, eyes not on croissants but on the manager, who had suddenly developed an emergency in the back room. "Or it won't come at all," the shorter one answered. "Depends how badly they want their problems to stop multiplying." "I hate math," the first said. Lorenzo watched Maya carry 2 cappuccinos like small, living things. Her path would carry her past the men. She didn't flinch when Tall Coat smiled the kind of smile that breaks things. He leaned an elbow on the counter as if marking territory and said too casually, "Hey, sweetheart." Maya didn't stop moving. "Not a name I answer to," she said, and the cups didn't tremble. Shortcoat's mouth ticked. Everybody answers to something. "True," she said, setting the cups down with infuriating calm. "Mine's Maya. If you want service, use it. If you want trouble, the door's still open." The line behind them went quiet in that particular way public spaces do when witnesses consider their roles. Lorenzo's hand rested flat on the table. He didn't stand. Not yet. He measured the distance to the men, to Maya, to the kid at the register, and the mother with a stroller. He measured the camera's angle. He measured how much of himself he could afford to spend in this room without bankrupting his anonymity. The men didn't push. Not today. The taller one sighed as if bored of his own menace. "We'll be back for the math," he said, and left a business card on the counter that was only blank on one side. The other side showed a phone number that changed weekly, and a name that would not be the one his mother gave him. Maya slid the card into the tip jar without looking at it, a small act of desecration that pleased Lorenzo more than it should have. Then she returned to the work of keeping a room human. He could have loved her just for that, if he let himself love, which he didn't, which he couldn't, which he had avoided like a man avoids mirrors. A little before noon, the manager finally emerged, smoothing his tie as if it might erase the last quarter hour of spinelessness. "You can't antagonize customers," he told Maya as if he had been in the room. "They weren't customers," she said. "They were weather. It passed." "Maybe it rains harder next time," he snapped. "Then we close the windows," she said. "Or we hand out towels." She turned away before he could scrape up something clever. She had work to do. He had a complaint to file with his own cowardice. Lorenzo stood, tossed his empty cup, and discovered the manager suddenly had time for him. "Everything to your liking, sir." Polite with the oily caution of a man who senses a shark under still water but can't find the fin. "Coffee's good," Lorenzo said, voice street corner again. "Any feedback?" His smile asked for a confession the room couldn't hear. "Only this," Lorenzo said, nodding at the tip jar where the card slept under singles and coins. "Trash comes in all shapes." The manager's smile died a little. "We'll be fine," he said, which is what people say when they won't. "Will you?" Lorenzo asked. The man's jaw tried to be brave. "We have procedures." "Those save lives," Lorenzo said. "Until they don't." He left before he stayed. Outside, Nico's car rolled to the curb like a shadow deciding to take a shape. Lorenzo slid in. Nico didn't bother with hello. "Your manager's name is Colin Voss," he said. "Came from a competitor 2 years ago with references that were enthusiastic." "Bought," Lorenzo said. "Probably. He's been rounding the wrong way on delivery invoices. Tiny numbers, but tiny numbers relay messages to people who speak their language. The men? Not ours. Not cops. Outsourcing muscle. Someone wants a foothold. In my house, Lorenzo said mildly. Front porch for now. Nico handed him a thin file. Maya Hart, local girl, grew up 3 blocks from here. Father died when she was 19. 2 part-time jobs for years. This is her steady one. Paid up on rent, late on electricity twice, paid the arrears with overtime. Hospital bill from last fall, stitches on her left wrist. Kitchen accident, took an extra shift the next day. Lorenzo traced the line of print with his eyes and willed his face to stay impassive, though inside something soft rose like bread. Family? Her mother lives upstate. Arthritis. A younger brother, Evan, college dropout, trying to unveil the future. He's been in rooms with the wrong people but keeps walking back out. That's luck or someone watching him. She's watching him, Lorenzo said. Probably. He closed the file. She said 4 words. Nico's silence was a question. You are safe here, Lorenzo murmured, and the words did to the air in the car what they had done to the air in the cafe. Made it warmer by a degree that mattered. Strange thing to say to a stranger, Nico said. Not strange if you mean it, Lorenzo said. Strange if no one ever said it to you when you needed it. Nico turned the key. Where to? Back to the office, Lorenzo said, though it wasn't where he wanted to go. And call legal, quietly. I want our employment policy clarified. Managers have discretion to comp within reason. Make kindness a line item we can measure. You want to change policy because a stranger handed you a sentence? I want to put into writing what I should have put into my bones, Lorenzo said. Before someone like Voss breaks it. Careful, Nico said again, and Lorenzo almost smiled because it was their oldest game. Nico said careful, and Lorenzo pretended he still remembered how. That night he read reports he didn't want and pushed aside a glass he didn't need. The city laid its lights out like a map he had memorized too well. He closed his eyes and saw only a chalkboard crown and a woman telling a room it was safe because she had decided to make it so. Around midnight his phone lit. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Almost. Enzo, he said, using the name that fit this part of him, the part with fewer angles. A voice he recognized from the cafe. Young, earnest, careful not to sound scared, tried to be brave. Sorry to bother you. You always sit in the corner in the mornings. I got your number from a friend who knows a friend. My name's Tom. I'm a barista at Cento. He let his tone stay neutral. Everything okay, Tom? It will be, Tom said, which is what people say when it isn't. Maya's closing with Colin tonight. Those guys came back at 9. I took my break at the wrong time. I heard Colin say he could make inventory problems disappear if he had a personal errand covered. I don't know what that means, but it sounded like the kind of math those men like. Blood rose in Lorenzo's ears, quiet and hot. Where are you now? Stockroom. I locked the back door, but I can't keep it locked if he wants it open. Good, Lorenzo said. Keep it locked anyway. I'll be there in 7 minutes. How? Because I said I will be, Lorenzo answered, and hung up. He didn't call Nico, didn't call a car. He took the stairs because his elevator felt slow for the first time in years, and because sometimes a man needed to feel the burn from the ground to the fight. Rain had stopped. Streets gleamed like polished obsidian. He ran 3 blocks and walked the last one because a man who runs into a room brings something with him that gets hard to put away. He took the alley and checked the cameras he had paid for that nobody knew about. He listened at the back door. Silence. A muffled voice. The tiny squeal of a floorboard that placed everyone like chess pieces on a board he could flip if he had to. He knocked once. A beat. 2 bolts slid back. The door cracked. Tom's face, pale with effort, appeared in the wedge. I don't know who you are, the kid said, voice shaking with something like faith. But you're the only person I could think of who would come when I said your name. I'm everyone you don't want to meet, and the only one you want right now, Lorenzo whispered. Where is she? Front, the kid said. Colin's office door's half open. He told her she had to cover someone's debt because she'd been too generous this month. The words made Lorenzo's vision lens tighter. Stay here, he said. No matter what you hear, You do not open this door again. Even for you? Especially for me. He stepped into the dim corridor that ran behind the kitchen. Light bled under the office door. Voices bled with it. Can either be a saint or an example, Colin was saying with the strut of men who find courage in closed rooms, and saints don't get paid more. I don't want more, Maya said. I want to do this right. Then do the math, Colin snapped. I'm 500 short because of your little charity, and the guys you told to wait in line, they don't like waiting. So here's the deal. You replace the register shortage out of pocket, call it a lesson, or I tell them your brother's been asking questions on the wrong corners. Silence. You know Evan's name, Maya said, voice low with a brand new fear she hadn't earned. Everybody answers to something, Colin said, echoing a line he thought he'd invented. You answer to love. I answer to numbers. They answer to men who break fingers for fun. Let's all do our jobs, Maya. Lorenzo stepped through the doorway. He didn't kick it open. He didn't announce himself. He walked in with a stillness that changed the temperature. Colin's eyes scanned cap, jacket, jaw. Not recognizing, not yet. Maya looked up, and relief fled her face first. Then worry returned when she realized relief couldn't possibly make sense. Backroom's closed, Colin said, choosing affability, thinking charm was a currency that always spent. Employees only. Lorenzo's gaze didn't leave Maya. He's asking you to pay for his mistakes, he said quietly. I don't need help, she said immediately, because pride is the first thing good people reach for. I didn't ask what you needed. His voice stayed gentle. I said what he's doing. Colin's affability broke like thin ice. Out, he said to Lorenzo, and then to Maya. Is this one of your charity cases? You collect strays at the door now. Colin, Lorenzo said, turning slightly. I built this place so people could come in from the weather. You turned it into another kind of storm. The manager laughed then, but the laugh had too many edges. You talk like you own the room. Worse, Lorenzo said, and took off his cap. I own the building. He'd orchestrated enough reveals to recognize the exact millisecond a man realizes his history just got audited. The blood fell out of Colin's face. Mr. Moretti, he said, because he knew the name that showed up on checks. He didn't know the weight it carried elsewhere. Maya stood slowly, as if trying not to startle anyone, even truth. Her eyes found Lorenzo's and did something to his chest he did not have words for. You, she started and stopped, because words meant different things now and would need new roads. Finish your sentence later, he said gently. Right now, I need to hear him finish his. There's been a misunderstanding, Colin said, a phrase men choose when they've run out of honest ones. There has, Lorenzo agreed. He took one step closer. Invisible gravity shifted in the room. You misunderstood what kind of company this is. You thought if you skimmed small, you'd never drown. You invited men with empty business cards to shop for leverage in my house, and then you tried to make a woman pay a debt you incurred to thieves with the currency you knew would hurt her the most, fear for family. Colin swallowed. The act was loud. You can't prove. Lorenzo hated paperwork when truth was in the room. He preferred clean math. You're fired, he said. Effective the time it takes you to pick up your coat and leave. Security will walk you out. If you step wrong, I will make an example, not because I enjoy it, because I do not negotiate with men who put their weight on people who refuse to break. Colin looked at Maya as if she might save him. She looked at him as if she might forgive him if he told the truth. He did neither. He shouldered past Lorenzo, collecting a jacket that cost more than his courage, and fled down the corridor. The back door refused him. Tom kept it locked like he'd been told. The front door opened because doors obey physics, not morality. He vanished into a city that had already forgotten his name. Silence took the room. Lorenzo's pulse let go of his throat. He looked at Maya and saw the moment her admiration collided with her anger. He had saved her. He had lied to her. Both were true. Neither forgave the other. You are safe here, she said. But now the words didn't land where they had before. But you're not honest here. That's fair, he said, because it was. Why the cap? Why the act? Because I wanted to see if the room loved me when it didn't know my name, he said. Because I wanted to catch a thief without warning the wolves, and because I didn't expect to care how you placed a coffee lid like it mattered. The corner of her mouth moved. That's a strange reason to change your life. It's the truest one I've had in a while. A soft knock. Tom's face appeared in the doorway he wasn't supposed to open. Is everything... Oh. He saw Lorenzo, saw Maya, saw the absence of Colin like an empty chair at a table where someone always used to sit. He started backing up. It's okay, Tom, Maya said, gentleness returning like a tide. We're safe. Lorenzo heard the words a third time and realized they were not an observation. They were a vow. Tomorrow, he said, policy changes. You won't have to invent kindness with your own wallet. I'll put it in writing where cowards can't pretend it doesn't exist. She studied him. Policy doesn't fix fear. No, he said. Men do. And the right ones stand in the door when wolves get clever. You think you're the right one? I think I want to be, he said, and then he made the smallest mistake a careful man can make. He let the truth show on his face before he had a plan for what to do with it. She saw it. She looked away. I have tables, she said. I have work, he answered. They both meant more than they said. They both did less than they felt. The air in the room changed and learned both their names. And somewhere beyond the glass, two men with blank business cards counted hours on their fingers and promised the weather would get worse. By noon the next day, the cafe hummed with rumors dressed as facts. Colin resigned to pursue other opportunities. Colin transferred to a flagship store uptown. Colin was kidnapped by a disgruntled oat milk supplier. The truth traveled slower, as it often does when it carries no fireworks. He was fired because he was small in a way that hurt others. Lorenzo signed papers in an office above the store he had never sat in before. It smelled like printer ink and lemon cleaner and the faintest echo of cinnamon. He read the updated policy twice, then once more because words are only as good as the people who say them, and he wanted to respect them anyway. Managers could comp within defined limits. Discretion favored dignity. Register accounting included a line item for community care, with clear reporting that dignified generosity instead of burying it. Over time, they would tune the thresholds. Eventually, it would become a story he told investors about loyalty metrics. Today, it was just a way to put his grandmother's ghost back into a ledger. He walked down to the floor. Customers moved like weather systems, bumping and blurring. Maya handed a to-go cup to a nurse whose eyes looked like she hadn't slept since 2019. The nurse said thank you with her whole face. Lorenzo stood where she could see him if she wanted and not if she didn't. She did. Policy changes, he said. I heard, she said. Her voice was not cold. He was absurdly grateful it wasn't. You're angry I lied. I am, she said. You're also glad I was there. I am, she said again, and the truth landed between them as something solid they could both put a hand on if they needed balance. You can't say those 4 words to people and mean them if you don't mean them for yourself too. He almost asked her to repeat them just to see what they did to him. He didn't. I'm working on it. We're open until 10, she said. I'll be here until close, he answered. She nodded once and turned to greet a man who smelled like drywall and sweat. Lorenzo moved to his corner and pretended the numbers on his phone mattered more than the sound her laugh made when it surprised itself. Around 4, the door opened and brought the wrong weather with it. The 2 men in dark coats had returned with a third, older, smoother, the kind of smooth that comes from being sanded by years of careful malice. He did not push to the front. He folded into line as if politeness were a disguise he wore well. When he reached the register, he ordered tea. Chamomile, he said, like an inside joke. Maya's eyes didn't narrow, but they became more awake. We have a blend, she said. It's calming. That would be a first, he said pleasantly and stepped aside. He let the line move. He let the room breathe. Then he took his tea and wandered to Lorenzo's table as if chance had ideas. Business must be good, the man said, regarding the room like it was a crossword puzzle that refused to be solved. Community places always do well before winter. People like to be inside. Lorenzo didn't look up from his phone. Depends on who's trying to come in. Wolves are charming when they're dry, the man mused. Less so when the rains soaked their patience. Lorenzo swiped to a blank screen. You from the Wolf Union? The man smiled. I represent interests that appreciate order. I represent interests that appreciate peace. Peace is order enforced by whoever has better poets, the man said, and sipped his tea. We can skip the metaphors. We have a little business with your former manager. He owes money to people who did him a favor and now require their interest paid. He tells us he was encouraged to be creative with his books. Imagine our surprise when we discovered your policy changes cut off his creativity entirely. I'll send condolences to his muse, Lorenzo said. The man tilted his head. We don't want his money. We want access. A room like this is useful to men like me. Men like you. We could share. The offer was almost comical. No, you don't know the terms yet. I heard enough, Lorenzo said. Still, the man continued softly, terms exist whether you listen or not. You touched our business by firing a link in a chain we tug on. You made a room safer than we prefer. You, Mr. Moretti, interrupted Math. Lorenzo finally looked up. He didn't smile. He didn't glare. He held the man's gaze the way you hold a door, without moving anything but your will. Then change your equation. The man set his cup down with surgical care. 14 days, he said, voice cordial, eyes not. We require a back room that stays blind twice a week for 1 hour after close. A truck comes and goes. No cameras. No questions. In return, your stores are islands. Nothing touches them. No inspectors with itchy pens. No competitors with cheap rent. No fires that start in confused dumpsters. Only good weather. 14 days to consider. No, Lorenzo repeated, and his calm had the weight of a building. You have 0. The man stood, collected his coat, and left the tea half full. He paused by the counter and smiled at Maya. Compliments to the staff, he said. They make a man feel at home. Good service does that, she answered, and her voice was a wall that looked like a field. When the door closed behind him, Lorenzo felt the room breathe out, the exhale the body saves when the snake leaves the path. He texted Nico 3 names and a time. Nico replied with a period because sometimes punctuation is more comforting than promises. Maya came to his table only when the line thinned to the point that a person could talk without stealing a minute from someone hungry. She didn't sit. The room had rules about optics. She leaned on nothing and touched nothing, and yet made it feel like he had been steadied. You didn't flinch, she said. I'm tired, he said. That man thinks words are leashes. That man thinks a lot of wrong things. Her eyes studied him. Are you going to bring trouble here to keep trouble away? No, he said, and meant it. I'm going to meet trouble somewhere with no faces to memorize. You always win? Only when I lose something first. What's the cost this time? He almost said me. He almost said the person I was before you said 4 words I can't stop hearing. He said sleep. Do you want coffee? She asked, and both of them knew she meant armor you can drink. No, he said. I want you to lock the front door early tonight and go straight home. Let Tom handle close. Tom is a baby, she said fondly. He's a baby who did exactly what I told him to do last night, Lorenzo said, and that won a small smile he wanted to hoard. I'll walk him to the subway, she said, making a plan that held 2 hearts at once. Take the back route, he said. Avoid the alley. You think they'd? I don't think, he said softly. I plan for all versions, so I only have to live through one. She nodded. And you? I'm going to make sure the only math those men do tonight is counting steps away from here. You are safe here, she said again, and this time he let the sentence land on him like a cloak. He didn't deserve it. He wore it anyway. At 9:30, Tom flipped the sign early while pretending not to. Maya counted down the drawer with a precision Lorenzo wished he could bottle and pour over his cruise. She slid 2 singles into the tip jar for a man who'd left his change but not his gratitude. She wiped the counter with slow circles, as if the act itself sealed the room. Nico waited 2 blocks away in a sedan that wasn't his usual, a car with no stories. Lorenzo slid into the passenger seat. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. He pointed. Nico turned. The city obeyed. The meeting place was a warehouse that used to store good furniture and now stored bad dreams. The men with dark coats were there with their nameless boss and 3 extras who wore fists like sport watches. The terms they offered sounded the same, dressed in new synonyms. Lorenzo let them talk until they felt smart. Then he told them a story. He told them about a grandmother who gave free coffee to men who forgot their wallets and to boys who forgot their dads. He told them about a girl who covered a register short with tip money and called it even because kindness is a currency that reproduces itself. He told them about the room where men felt safe because someone decided they should, and about the man who owned the deed and wanted the deed to match the room's soul. When he finished, the nameless boss laughed. "I don't speak poetry," he said. "Pity," Lorenzo said. "It's a cheaper language than blood." "We have 14 days, the man insisted, trying to salvage the script. "Then the weather changes." "You had 14 seconds, Lorenzo said. "We used them. Now you have an hour." "An hour for what?" "To leave my neighborhood like you were never in it," Lorenzo said. "Or I start subtracting." "We multiply," the man said. "Not after you try it once," Lorenzo said, and the quiet in his voice made even the extras adjust their watches. Nico stepped forward then, as if bored, which meant he was exactly as interested as he needed to be. He set a phone on a crate and hit play. Colin's voice filled the warehouse, words about inventory and back doors and names of men who like math. The extras stopped checking the time, the boss stopped being smooth. The 2 coatmen looked at the floor like it might eat them if they moved. "We don't keep trophies," Lorenzo said. "We keep receipts." The police version of this goes to exactly one detective who likes me more than he should because his brother owes me something he doesn't like to owe. The other version goes to men who don't mind doing your brand of math, only backwards. Which ending do you prefer? The nameless man measured him, habit meeting a force it didn't know where to apply. "We won't touch your cafes," he said at last. "But business has to flow somewhere." "Find wetter streets," Lorenzo said. "These are dry." They left with the sullen efficiency of men who had miscalculated their appetite. Nico picked up the phone like he'd only set down a napkin. Lorenzo breathed once, deeply, the kind of breath you take when the future just shrank from an avalanche to a storm you can drive through. Back at the cafe, the lights were off except the one over the pastry case that always refused to sleep. Maya and Tom stood inside the door. When Lorenzo reached it, she unlocked it like a ritual. "You're late," she said. "You're safe," he answered. Tom cleared his throat. "I'll, finish mop." "You'll go home," Maya said. "Text me when you're on the train." Tom looked between them as if realizing stories come in chapters, and he was not supposed to read this one yet. "Thanks, mister." He caught himself. "Enzo." Lorenzo watched him go because it felt like watching a decision walk safely down the street. When he turned back, Maya had her hands shoved into her apron pockets like she needed somewhere to put the parts of her that shook. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I wanted to." "That's not the same as needing to." "I know," he said, and surprised himself by wanting to say more. "I used to think needing made a man weak. Then you said 4 words, and now I'm not sure." She laughed softly, a sound he was starting to measure days by. "Which ones?" He didn't say them. He didn't need to. She knew. She stepped back, letting him into a room that was closed, but not to him. "Tomorrow," she said, "we're going to have to talk like adults about the fact that you lied to me for 2 days and also saved my job twice." "Tomorrow," he agreed. "And we're going to have to talk about my brother." "We are. And about your enemies." "We will. And about why you look at my hands like they're telling you where to go." He exhaled. "Do I?" "You do," she said, not unkindly. He nodded. "Then I'll have to explain a part of my life that uses words I don't like hearing in your mouth." "Maybe use different words," she said. "I'll try." He stepped back to go and found himself unwilling. He left anyway because restraint was the only thing he had not yet broken in front of her. He didn't see the figure watching from across the street, phone lifted to capture grainy images, a story forming for someone else's ears. He didn't see the way trouble can evolve when it's denied one doorway and goes hunting for another. Trouble found one. It spelled his name, Evan. 3 days of good weather can make a man forget winter exists. The cafe had them in a row, laughter without tension, lines that moved, a tip jar that held thank yous in paper form. Lorenzo limited himself to 2 hours each morning, then one at close. He told himself it was operational diligence. Nico told him it was obvious. Maya spoke to him when she needed to and when she didn't. He learned the way she breathed before she made a joke. He learned the exact angle she tilted a pitcher to coax silk into milk. He learned that she filed broken things under to be fixed in a notebook that looked like it had been through as much as she had. He also learned she could carry a room across a difficult minute with nothing but eye contact and the right sentence spoken at the right time. It made him want to write policy in ink the color of her voice. On the fourth good day, he found her in the alley at noon, phone pressed to her ear, shoulders tight enough to ring like glass. He didn't need to hear the words to know something had tipped. He rested a hand on brick, waited like a wall. She ended the call and didn't pretend she hadn't cried. "Evan," she said, and the name did the work of a paragraph. He tried to help a friend who owed someone. The friend ran. Debt didn't. "Where?" "Down by the river," she said. "A warehouse with the big mural of an egret." He knew the building. He knew all the buildings. He swallowed the part of him that wanted to promise too much and replaced it with the part of him that kept promises he could keep. "He called you for money?" "He called to say sorry," she said, grimacing at the shape of it, "and not to call the police." "Of course he did," Lorenzo said softly. "He's a good kid who thinks he's a bad one." "That's the most dangerous kind." She looked at him then in a way that asked questions she wasn't yet willing to say aloud. "What are you going to do?" "What I wish someone had done for me when I was stupid and proud," he said. "I'm going to stand in a room and be the worst option for the wrong men. I don't want you hurt." "I don't intend to be," he said. "But I don't intend to leave your brother in a story like the one your manager tried to write either." She put both hands flat on his chest without meaning to, startled by her own need to stop him, and then snatched them back as if she'd touched a stove. He barely kept the shock off his face. The place where her palms had been felt branded. "You are safe here," she whispered, as if the sentence could stretch and cover him in a place it had no business reaching. He left without making a promise he couldn't keep. He called Nico. He called one other man whose name Lorenzo never said into phones. They met at the mural of the egret, which had been painted by an artist nobody remembered until her colors started peeling in sheets last winter. Inside, the air tasted like wet metal and old secrets. Evan sat on a crate with his wrists zip-tied and his chin up the way boys hold their chins when they're terrified of learning what it's like to put them down. 3 men paced like they were rehearsing anger for an audience. One counted a stack of cash that turned out to be short on purpose. Men like this preferred debt to payments. It gave them company. "Afternoon," Lorenzo said, because sometimes politeness is a blade. "You brought friends," said the one with a scar that tried to warn you before it was too late. "I brought witnesses," Lorenzo said. "So nobody forgets who said what." "Your boy owes," Scar said, nodding at Evan. "He tried to play hero and got stage fright." "I'll pay," Evan blurted, voice big, courage real, plan non-existent. "You'll sit quietly," Lorenzo said softly, and it was not a command he enjoyed giving. "Let adults traffic in mistakes." Scar smiled. "We weren't expecting you," he said. "You should always expect me," Lorenzo said. "I'm the worst news on a good day." "Cute," Scar said. "Debt doubled." "That's not math," Lorenzo said. And then he stepped into a version of himself he kept locked most days, because the city ran better when he did. His voice dropped. His eyes stopped blinking. The world compressed to a room with 3 problems in it. You're going to take what was originally owed. No fees, no interest, no fiction. And then you're going to tell me who told you Evan's name. Scar's gaze flicked, a man whose eyes had betrayed him before. The flick went toward the side office, a space with a cheap desk and an expensive camera, a recording setup, a memory machine. Lorenzo didn't look. Nico did, as if bored. The third man they brought walked to the desk and checked the files with a surgeon's hands. Names, schedules, a log of who passes where, who works when. A cafe mentioned twice, a brother's name, a manager's email. Collins. Lorenzo felt the disappointment like a cold thing he wanted to spit out. Even fired small men leave big messes. Scar took a step too close, mistaking the silence for surrender. Lorenzo let the man smell danger and then move past it, a trick learned in rooms that remembered screams too well. The debt is paid, Lorenzo said. He slid a small stack of bills across the table, exact, agonizingly correct. Evan goes home. You stop using his name to buy your way into rooms you're not allowed to visit. Scar measured risk and found the math different than usual. Something about the stillness made him believe in meteorology. He nodded once, slow, like a man who knows how many teeth he can lose without changing his smile. They cut Evan loose. The kid stood on shaky legs and tried not to look at Lorenzo as if he were a miracle. I had it, Evan said, because boys say ridiculous things when shame is a weight they don't know how to counterbalance. You almost had it, Lorenzo said. The difference between those two can be your life. Are you going to tell Maya? Evan whispered. Yes, Lorenzo said, because I'm going to teach you how to tell her so she forgives you before she sentences you. They walked out into a city that immediately tried to claim them. Horns, heat, the smell of bread. Evan kept pace like he had learned something about himself he didn't want to forget. Lorenzo stopped at the corner and looked down at him like a man measuring the fit of a suit he hadn't intended to buy. You will get a job, he said. One that pays in pride more than cash. You will show up early, leave late, and talk less than you think. You will earn a proposal from your own life to be different, and you will sign it. Evan nodded too quickly. Yes, sir. You will call me Lorenzo, he said. Yes, Lorenzo. And when men with clever smiles offer shortcuts, you will tell them you do not run. I don't run, Evan said, and his mouth set around the sentence like a door jamb. Maya waited outside the cafe with her phone in her hands like it could outshout her thoughts. When she saw Evan, she ran first and then stopped herself a foot away, hands forming a shape that could be a hug or a map of the distance she needed respected. He said he was sorry. He said he was stupid. He said he would fix it. Then he cried because boys do that too, when you let them finish their sentences without interruption. She hugged him like a woman who left doors open for the people she loved to return through. She whispered something into his hair that Lorenzo didn't deserve to hear. Evan nodded into her neck like he'd been reset to factory settings. When she let him go, she turned and looked at Lorenzo the way a person looks at the sky after a storm. Grateful, wary, unwilling to pretend it had been nothing. You paid, she said. I returned what someone stole, he answered. From him, from you, from me. I don't like that you had to. Neither do I. They stood there in the administrative ache of a street where other people had errands. She glanced at his hands, not to check for blood, but as if translating what kind of man they belonged to. What did it cost you? She asked. Nothing yet, he said. And later? Ask me when later gets here, he said, trying to be honest, trying not to scare her with futures he hadn't invited. That night the cafe stayed open half an hour later than policy allowed because policy does not close rooms, people do. Regulars lingered. Someone played piano on a phone speaker low enough to be forgiven. Nico came in and nodded at Tom like a king acknowledging a knight for a battle won by showing up. Maya moved like she always did, steady, exact, warm. But when the rush thinned and they were three bodies and the residue of a long day, she walked to Lorenzo's corner and didn't stop 2 feet away. She sat. She folded her hands to keep them from doing something they might regret. You saved my brother, she said. You keep saving things I love. He swallowed. I'm saving my own reflection, he said, because a man sometimes tells a truth he doesn't intend to, when he's near the person who started it. Her eyes softened. Is that why you looked like a stranger when you walked in the first day? Because you were one to yourself? Yes, he said, not blinking. Then we're the same, she whispered. I've been working here for 4 years, and tonight is the first night I'm not sure if the room made me or I made the room. You made it, he said. The room only cooperated. Say it again, she murmured, eyes closing as if memorizing. You made it, he repeated, and his voice made a promise his body would spend the rest of the week trying not to cash too early. Tom coughed somewhere. Nico found it interesting to examine a napkin dispenser. The city outside practiced being snow by throwing wind at the glass. The bell over the door moved once, thoughtfully. Maya stood. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow, he agreed. He didn't sleep. He didn't plan to. At 2 a.m., Nico texted a photograph of Colin with a man Lorenzo had not seen before. Well-dressed, expensively bored, a face that decorated charity galas and arraignment rooms with equal ease. The caption was 3 words: he has friends. Lorenzo stared at the image until dawn turned photographs into memory. Then he put on the jacket that made him invisible, because sometimes vanishing was the fastest way to move toward what you wanted. He didn't see who photographed him slipping through the side door at 7. Someone always is. By noon, the image would have a caption he could not control. By evening, wolves would come with smiles. The headline wasn't the worst he'd seen. Then again, the worst he'd seen didn't run on lifestyle blogs. Undercover owner or underworld. Beneath a grainy photo of him stepping through the cafe's side door. The article didn't say Mafia. It said whispers, sources, rumors. It implied. It performed innocence while staging a murder. Tom found it on his break and turned his phone toward Maya as if presenting a snake to a saint. She read the first paragraph, then the last, and decided to skip the middle where gossip fattens. Her face didn't show fear. It showed what happens after fear leaves: resolve. Lorenzo walked in 3 minutes later and knew. He felt the room's attention pinch and looked at the screen of a teenager who didn't tilt away fast enough. He took the corner because the corner let him see without drawing lines. Maya didn't hurry to him. She served 3 customers first. She solved a milk frother stutter. She told a delivery driver to come back at 3 when someone would be here to sign the clipboard he loved too much. Then she approached Lorenzo's table with a rag she didn't need as a prop so no one in the room could read their mouths and build a new headline out of shapes. Are you in danger? She asked. Yes, he said. But I'm weatherproof. She wanted to smile and didn't. Is the cafe? Not if I leave it to weather itself, he said. She glanced at the door. 2 men in suits had just come in without thirst. Not the same pair. These wore legal pads in their minds. They made a show of reading a menu. Who sent them? She asked. Someone who wants the story to be true so they can sell the sequel, he said. She lowered the rag. The fabric dripped 1 clear drop onto the table he'd already wiped. I need truth, she said, and the way she said I pulled an answer out of him he hadn't rehearsed. I run an empire that doesn't survive entirely on cinnamon and smiles, he said. And I'm halting parts of it because you looked at me and I remembered my grandmother pouring coffee into a cup that held a man together for a morning. It was not a legal answer. It was worse. It was honest. She took it in, let it sit, and then nodded as if accepting a price posted where she could see it. Then we do this out loud, she said. Not hiding in corners, not lying to children. That will cost too, he said. I work for tips, she said. I know how to make small money mean, and I know how to look a man in the face when he wants me to flinch. He almost laughed for the first time that day. You are safe here, he said to her, and it was the first time he'd said it back, the sentence heavy and right in his mouth. She heard what it cost him and didn't make it cheaper by pretending she hadn't. They made a plan using milk steaming as cover. At 5, after the after-school sugar rush, but before the commuter coffee tidal wave, they would hold a staff meeting with all 3 of them, Maya, Tom, and the assistant manager from a sister store who could be trusted. They'd talk about headlines and policies and what to say when a customer asked, "Is it true?" They would build a spine out of sentences. If the wolves came, they'd find teeth that knew which way to close. At 4:52, the two suited men stopped pretending. They approached the counter with press badges turned to legible. "We're doing a human interest piece," one said, "on gentrification and its friendly face." "Sounds cute," Maya said, and handed them a printed statement Lorenzo had written while she made 3 macchiati without looking down. It said, "Our cafe is for neighbors. Our policy is compassion. Our owner believes rooms like this keep cities alive." It said nothing else. It didn't need to. The men wanted more. She gave them the menu. They left with tea they didn't drink and quotes they didn't want. The article that appeared later was shorter than the photograph. That was the only victory they needed from that skirmish. The real war arrived at 7 when the door opened and brought with it the man from the warehouse with the expensive boredom. He wasn't alone. He had a boy with him whose face was too young to carry that much witness. The boy stared at Lorenzo like you stare at a comet. Bright, dangerous, a thing you retell. It took Lorenzo 1 heartbeat to recognize him. The son of a councilman. The son of a man who could change zoning laws with a text message. The son of a man who would prefer the word donation in a headline to bribe. "Evening," the nameless boss said, and this time his smile was a scalpel. "We're neighbors tonight." "Buy something," Maya said before the room could get stupid from the presence of theater. "Or step aside so the line can live." The boy blinked, surprised anyone spoke to his father's friend like that. The man chuckled. "2 hot chocolates," he said, "extra whipped cream." Maya made them with the same care she gave a nurse's Americano. She slid them across like nothing in the world was wrong, and maybe in that second, nothing was. "What is this?" Lorenzo asked, nodding slightly at the boy. "Insurance," the man said. "Cameras like a young face. So do juries. You brought a child into a room where your mouth intends to spill poison," Lorenzo said, too softly for the boy, perfectly for the man. The man didn't bother with pretend. "Your photograph made ripples," he said. "I'm here to make waves. In 48 hours, an inspector will visit 3 of your cafes. Sanitation will find issues. Occupancy will be questioned. Citations will be written. Blogs will have new photographs." Or, Lorenzo said, bored on purpose. "Or you adjust your policy," the man said, admiration in his voice as if they were bartering over rugs. "You keep kindness for customers and give me an hour after close once a week in a back room that no longer exists on paper." "No," Maya said, and the man finally looked at her like he had noticed the person who could pull a building down with 4 words. "You don't get a vote," he said. "I'm the only vote that matters," she said. "Because I decide what this room means. He owns the deed, I own the air." The boy watched this exchange with open curiosity that might save him one day if he remembered who told the truth and who just liked the shape of his own sentences. Lorenzo stood then, not fast, not slow, just enough to change what gravity was doing. "I'll say this once," he said, "and then I'm going to say something else and you'll remember it longer." The once. "There's no room, there's no hour, there's no back door for you to claim. That was yesterday's math. Today is new." "And the thing I'll remember?" the man asked, amused. "Get out," Lorenzo said, and the room responded to the verb the way a body responds to a name it hasn't heard since childhood. Everyone stood a little taller. The man's smile thinned. The boy's hot chocolate trembled. "You don't own the street," the man said. "I own my house," Lorenzo said, "and I choose my weather." The man left, not hurried, insult intact but usefulness undiminished. The boy glanced back, eyes finding Maya like a person looking for a better map. She winked. He smiled into his cup and chose, just then, who he wanted to be in 20 years. The inspector came anyway the next day, and he came with a camera crew that pretended it was just passing by. He found nothing that wouldn't shame him in an honest court. He left with a receipt that said as much and a crumpled napkin with the name of a lawyer he should hire if he ever wanted to sleep well again. Courtesy of Nico. At closing, with adrenaline drawing thin, Maya sat at Lorenzo's table again and didn't pretend she had an excuse. "I don't want to be brave every day," she said. "You shouldn't have to be," he answered. "Then why am I?" Because you said 4 words that made a promise to strangers, he said. And promises are heavy. She touched her wrist absent-mindedly where the old stitches had been. I broke a glass last year, she said. Too tired to be careful. I bled a lot for something so small. That's what today felt like. He wanted to take her hand. He didn't. Do you regret making people feel safe? No, she said. I regret that it made me want something I don't know how to protect. What? She swallowed. Looked down. Looked up. Us. The room did a thing to his ribs he'd trained them not to do. He couldn't afford the luxury of pretending he hadn't heard. I lied to you, he said. You did, she said. And then you told the truth. I have enemies. So do I, she said, and the courage in her voice put a crown on an ordinary sentence. Mine are pettier, yours are louder, but we're both standing in the door. He breathed like a man surfacing. Tomorrow, he said, because rushing would ruin it. Come early, before open. Why? Because I have a story to tell you about a boy who thought safety was a room you buy with guns, and a grandmother who told him safety was a room you build with coffee. Will it have a happy ending? She asked, not teasing. It will if you keep saying 4 words when I forget how, he said. She stood. Then we already wrote the last page. He wanted to say her name like a prayer. Instead, he said, lock the door. She did. When the lights went out, a camera across the street caught exactly nothing, which is an image you can't sell, which was the point. But the nameless man didn't need a camera. He had memory. He had a watch he tapped when he wanted to hear time complain. He had a plan that involved a truck, a quiet block, and a rumor about gas lines that didn't have to be true to make firefighters nervous. And he had 14 hours to become an emergency. Lorenzo had 12 to stop him. Dawn came reluctant, like the city didn't trust it yet. Lorenzo arrived first and made bad espresso on purpose to remind himself why he paid people with better hands. He unlocked the door for Maya and didn't hide the way his chest found a rhythm when she stepped inside. She closed the door behind her and leaned back against it, as if choosing to be inside was itself an act. Maybe it was. Tell me the story, she said, going to the counter by muscle memory and setting up a station, as if the room would open itself if she didn't help. He told it as she worked. About a boy with fists too quick and a mind too sharp for the street he grew up on. About a grandmother who fed cops and thieves with the same spoon and believed redemption tasted like cinnamon. About a first cafe built on a corner. Nobody wanted that turned into 10 and then 20 and then this. The room where a woman made strangers into neighbors with a sentence the boy had never heard spoken to him and meant. He told it without confessing the parts that would scare her. She understood anyway. That was the danger with people like her. Understanding is their native language. When he finished, she turned off a grinder and let the hum fade. You can leave it, she said. The part that tries to own you. I'm trying, he said. But men like me don't retire. We either disappear or we become statues people put pigeons on. Then be a third thing, she said simply. Be a man who chooses doors for other people and stands by them while they walk through. He smiled, small, real. I don't know how to do that without breaking things. Maybe some things need breaking, she said. Not people, systems. He wanted to kiss her then. He didn't. He stepped closer and let the nearness be a sentence that ended without a period. The bell over the door remained silent. The city held its breath. He reached up and brushed a rebel curl back behind her ear, a touch so slight a camera wouldn't have caught it. Her eyes closed for the time it took the curl to learn obedience. When they opened, he saw a future he didn't dare inventory. The day tried to be ordinary. It failed. At noon, the block 2 streets over filled with fire trucks that had come to check a gas leak that didn't exist. The city redrew traffic. A vendor burned his sausages and blamed the wind. A mother cursed a tow truck and then apologized because her daughter watched. Chaos never needs a reason. It only needs a start. At 2, a white truck parked illegally in the alley and pretended to fix something while 3 men in cheap uniforms pretended to carry things. At 2:10, Nico texted, "They're rehearsing." At 3, the nameless man walked past with a coffee he didn't buy and a smile that suggested patience had been fed. At 3:05, Maya told a first-date couple that love isn't magic so much as stubbornness with good timing. At 3:06, Lorenzo decided to choose the shape of the ending. He stepped into the middle of the room and spoke in a voice designed to fill it without rattling any cups. "Neighbors," he said, and some people looked up because some words always have gravity where they're used right. "We're going to close at 4 today, on the house until then. Then we lock the door and let the city handle its mood." A cheer rose because free coffee teaches better theology than sermons. Maya met his eyes, questions already forming. He shook his head once. Tiny. Trust. And she nodded because she'd decided to many days ago and wasn't about to undeceive now. At 3:59, they served the last 2 cappuccinos to a pair of teenagers, who told him thank you like they meant it. At 4, Tom flipped the sign. At 4:02, Nico and 2 others stood at the corners of the room where they looked like men waiting for rides. At 4:03, the white truck in the alley revved, then coughed, then died. At 4:04, the nameless man arrived at the door and tried it like he owned keys to the world. Locked. He smiled. He knocked. He kept it polite because cameras love impoliteness, and he didn't want to be loved today. Lorenzo approached the door and stopped a foot away, a man talking to a man through glass, which is the best metaphor they'd share. "You're closed," the man said, gesturing at the sign. "We're safe," Lorenzo said. "From what?" the man asked, and his smile asked, "From me?" "From you," Lorenzo said. "Open the door," the man said. "Let's be civil." "We can be civil through windows," Lorenzo said. "If your words fog the glass, I'll wipe it with a napkin." The man laughed, delighted against his will. "You're funny." "I'm tired," Lorenzo said. "There's a difference." "You can't lock a neighborhood out," the man warned. "I can lock my house," Lorenzo said. "And I can call 14 people in 13 minutes who will make your house very inconvenient to enter for a month. You wouldn't." "Try me," Lorenzo said, and the man saw it then. The part of Lorenzo that didn't bluff because he didn't have to. He tapped his watch, checked the street, and nodded as if approving a rival's restaurant. "This isn't over," he said. "No," Lorenzo agreed, and then he made a choice he would relive later when his pillow tried to turn into a metric. He opened the door. Gasps. Maya's eyes flared like a match. Nico's weight shifted imperceptibly to the ball of his foot. The nameless man leaned in 1 inch, confident in his ability to consume space as needed. "You walked into my house," Lorenzo said, the door barely open, his body the hinge. "So we'll finish it in mine." "What a gentleman," the man said, amused and alert. "Not a gentleman," Lorenzo said. "A host." He raised his voice 2 millimeters. "Maya." She was already there. She didn't stand behind him. She stood beside him. The nameless man registered her and recalculated again, a man annoyed by variables. "You're the one with the sentence," he said to her. "The 4 words." "Yes," she said. "Say them," he said, as if he were staging a magic trick for a crowd. She looked at Lorenzo for permission she didn't require, and he gave it because he needed her to know he knew what power is supposed to look like. She turned to the room, Tom, Nico, the teenagers with milk mustaches, the old couple with the muffin, and spoke as if laying hands on the city. "You are safe here." 4 words, a door, a decision. The nameless man smiled like a wolf pretending to respect a church. "We'll see," he said, and this time when he left he looked back not out of menace, but out of curiosity, which is always more dangerous. They held the lock for another hour. The white truck left with nothing. The fire trucks 2 streets over found a new call. The room exhaled. The teenagers asked if they could sweep. The old couple offered the muffin's larger half. Tom cried for 30 seconds and then pretended he'd been chopping onions in the back. Lorenzo closed the blinds and turned the sign to open again because safety is not a default setting. It's a function you choose. People filtered in with the care usually reserved for entering libraries or waking babies. Maya went to the machine and made espresso like music. He waited until the room found a new equilibrium. Then he slid into her breathing space and said the most dangerous sentence he could risk. "Come to dinner with me." She didn't flinch. "Yes," she said, like a woman stepping onto a boat knowing it would either carry her or teach her to swim. He took her hand for the first time. Heat, simplicity, a reminder that in a world of sharp edges, skin is still the softest proof we've survived. They went to a place that used to be a church and now served pasta like benedictions. They didn't talk business. They talked favorite words. Hers was belong. His, he realized, was stay. Halfway through dessert, a lemon tart that hurt and healed, he said the thing that would either ruin the night or perfect it. "I love you." He hadn't planned to. He hadn't weighed it. The sentence arrived fully built and demanded a mouth to live in. It chose his. She sat with it. That was her way. She didn't throw it back to see if it would break. She held it up to the light. "Say it again," she said softly, and he did. Not louder, just truer. "I love you." She exhaled slowly. "Then know this, Lorenzo Moretti. I will not be your softness to come home to after you are hard with the world. I will be your softness and your hardness if that's what it takes. But you don't get to keep both lives and call it love." He swallowed something that tasted like the first honest fear he'd allowed in months. "I'm changing," he said. "I know," she said. "I'm watching. You're not finished." "I don't want to be finished," he said. "Not if finished looks like statues and pigeons." "Then keep choosing," she said. "When the next man with a clever smile knocks, when the next boy with a stupid plan calls, when the next headline tries to tell me who you are." "How do I choose right?" he asked, and if he'd known how beautiful the question sounded, he might have been too proud to ask it. She smiled into her water glass. "Let it cost you sleep, not other people's safety." He paid in cash, as always. He walked her home. He didn't go in. He kissed her at the bottom of the stairs because he could not. It was not chaste. It was not devouring. It was the kind of kiss that writes new policy in a man's bones. When he stepped back, he was lighter and heavier at once. "You are safe here," she whispered against his mouth. And finally he understood the entire sentence. You, not your reputation, not your empire, are present, not past or potential, safe, more than unhurt, free. Here, with me, not anywhere else you break yourself for people who would never clean the pieces. He slept 3 hours and woke like a man who'd been forgiven and given a list of chores. He found the nameless man at a fundraiser everyone important attended when they wanted their names printed on sheets of paper people pretended to read. He stood beside him at the bar and ordered water just to annoy the bartender. He didn't look at him when he spoke. "I will never open my door for your math," he said. "I will keep trying to add," the man replied. "You'll lose your counters," Lorenzo said. "One by one, quietly. I'm done with storms. I'm doing drought." "Drought brings fires," the man murmured. "Then we'll plant green things," Lorenzo said. "Poetry again," the man sighed. "Policy," Lorenzo said, and he meant both. He left before the first speech. He walked back to the cafe and found the window fogged from inside. He wiped a circle with his palm like a child. Maya's face appeared, surprised, then smiling, then opening the door like the sentence she'd been saying since the morning he walked in, wearing rain on his shoulders and lies on his mouth. He stepped inside. The bell pinged. Tom waved. Nico pretended to scowl at a scone. The old couple were there, of course, splitting a muffin in history. Evan arrived with a resume in his hand and hope on his face. The room, as always, decided together how to be alive. Lorenzo moved behind the counter and took a place beside Maya. He was not good at steaming milk. He burned one pitcher and made Tom laugh. He read a ticket and wrote the name wrong and listened to the correct one like a lesson he wanted to ace next time. He said on the house twice for people whose mouths lied about how hard their day had been. He didn't look at the door for wolves. If they came, he had a woman who could name the room and a man beside the pastry case who could turn a problem into a memory. When the rush dipped, Maya nudged him with her shoulder. "You know," she said, "if you want to retire from statues and pigeons, I hear we're hiring managers with unusual qualifications." "What are the benefits?" he asked. "On-shift coffee," she said. And a woman who sees you. He swallowed the oldest ache and replaced it with the newest joy. I'll take it. On probation, she said lightly. Make it permanent, he said, and she looked at him like she might. At closing, they turned chairs upside down and left one table unset because Hope likes to imagine late customers. He walked her to the door. He didn't need to ask to kiss her. He read a room for a living, and this room said yes in 6 languages. Outside, the city agreed to be quiet for 1 whole minute. A miracle. He kissed her like a man who had run out of clever and found true. She kissed him back like a woman who built safety out of steam and sentences. When they parted, she touched the place on his cheek that insisted on dimpling when he let his face forget its job. Say something I can make a life on, she whispered. He didn't reach for poetry. He reached for policy. He reached for the 4 words that built a room and rebuilt a man. You are safe here. The bell behind them sounded. The sign still said, open, though it was not. He left it that way on purpose. Because some doors once named never truly close. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.